Today on Trad Takes, Jeff Bezos has officially been red-pilled, and we discuss the smackdown that Trump and Vance gave to President Zelenksyy of Ukraine in the Oval Office. All this and more on Trad Takes. Welcome to episode 9 of Trad Takes, hosted by the Traditionalists. Thank you for joining me yet again for another 20 to 30 minutes of political ramblings. Right now, without thinking, like this video and leave a comment. You know you want to. Scheduling note, in 2 days we are coming upon Ash Wednesday in the year of our Lord 2025. This Lent, like a lot of us do, I plan on major cutbacks from the phone, computer, TV, screens of all kinds, which makes it difficult for me to keep up on the news, which in turn makes it difficult to report and talk about the news. Therefore, the structure of Trad Takes will be slightly different for these next 6 or so weeks. I may report on a news story if it's so big that I manage to hear about it, through coworkers or something like that. Otherwise, I may potentially share interesting things that I come across in reading, philosophy, history, or any random tidbit. I may also take the opportunity to start playing with setting up a Make Science Catholic Again series. No promises on that one, but I want to try a few things out, see how they work. From a technological standpoint, recording my voice with a blank thumbnail is easy, but talking about science I think would require more visuals, so just trying to figure out how to make all that work, since I am indeed a caveman. There was a decent response in favor of Make Science Catholic Again, so thank you for all who responded for or against. Regardless, the 6-ish episodes releasing in Lent might be shorter, they might be less structured. I just wanted to give you all the heads up. And then I will resume politics and world talk after Easter. Unless, of course, the Lenten episodes do very well, and then I'll just always be unstructured. We'll start off today like we do every week by reading my favorite comment or comments from last week's video. I'm going to read a quick one and then a long one. So the quick one, Zelenksyy says, "We don't have a crazy person test for driving, which is why we still have people driving alone wearing masks. God bless." That comment made me laugh. Thank you for that, Zelenksyy. I do see people driving with masks, and I feel sorry for them. I remember how hard it was to go to work or go shopping masked up for a few months during the initial COVID scare. But holding on to it a full 5 years later, whew, that is dedication. Or you really like the smell of your own breath. Thank you, Zelenksyy. The other comment that I want to read and then probably discuss a little bit more is from I Am Not Afraid I Was Born to Do This. I am not afraid I was born to do this. Had my favorite comment from last week. "Shall not be infringed on your gravestone. Are you out of your mind?" with 5 question marks. You are going to meet your maker, and that is the thought you want to go with. Wow, more thought needed, I would say. Then there was a little back and forth in the comments, and after receiving pushback from some other commenters, the follow-up was, "I personally would never say anything like that. Death and me are no laughing matter." Thank you for the comment. I am not afraid I was born to do that. And I would say in response that technically you're right. This is not the thought I want to go to my judgment seat with. And yes, death is no laughing matter. But I strongly and wholeheartedly disagree with having an overly serious, dark, and humorless outlook on life and death. I think good humor is a virtue. And note that I say good humor, not bad humor. Bad humor is obviously humor that's bawdy, inappropriate, or God forbid, sacrilegious. That's obviously not the humor I'm talking about. But good humor, I think, can be good and even virtuous for several reasons. First, I think there's something essentially humble about humor. When we use it in moderation, we take ourselves less seriously. We often use it, and should often use it, to laugh at ourselves. We are ridiculous creatures, composed of a soul that's made in the image of God, and yet tied to this outlandish body, which is composed of the same matter that makes up dirt and worms. This body that daily does things that don't follow our intellect or will. This body that, by its nature, is earthy and gross. We all use the bathroom. We all have to shut off and be useless several hours a day to recharge. We all have a digestive system, which the more you know about, the more gross and nasty it seems. That would be an interesting topic for Make Science Catholic again. Anyway, there's something downright funny about our setup. And to me, humor kind of keeps us in touch with that. Secondly, and more importantly, I think we have the example of the saints. There is an excellent book written by Frank Sheed called Saints Are Not Sad. The point of the book and the biographies of the saints it contains is that saints were not sullen, judgmental, unfunny bores that just sulked their way through life, waiting for and preparing for death. A lot of them had very positive, chipper, and in some cases even a playful attitude. How could they not when they had sanctifying grace? How could they not be happy and joyful in the presence and the friendship of God? For some examples, you look at St. Lawrence, literally on his deathbed, joking with his executioners, telling them, "This side is done, ready to eat. You can turn me over now." Look at St. Thomas More. His last recorded words were a joke to his executioner. For those who don't know, he needed help to climb up to the scaffold where he was going to be beheaded, but then assured his executioners that he'd need no help getting down. Perhaps that's a joke that he would have wanted on his gravestone. Hearing these stories, I venture to say that these saints, and many others, were almost giddy about death. They couldn't hide the joy, the wonder, and the humor that kind of necessarily came from within. Their last recorded words, these saints that we should aspire to be like and to imitate, their last recorded words were jokes. Lastly, remember that everything we are, except sin, comes from God. We like building things because it's a way that we replicate in our own small way the creative power of God. That's why children like to build Lego sets, and I like to build firearms. We enjoy talking and being with our loved ones because it is the faintest reflection of the interpersonal relationship that the three persons in the Godhead have with each other. You can't tell me that humor is a solely animalistic thing, and you can't convince me that all humor is satanic. These examples of the saints that I listed would say differently. Therefore, in my mind, I must logically conclude that good humor is also a reflection somehow of God. I say somehow, it's a way that we don't understand, of course, and we never will in this life. Obviously, this notion can be taken too far, and even blasphemously. We've all seen the Protestant images of a laughing Christ. But humor does come, as all things do, except sin, from God. I think G.K. Chesterton said it best. This was in the end of his orthodoxy. He said, quote, "There was one thing that was too great for God to show us when he walked upon our earth, and I have sometimes fancied that it was his mirth." Chesterton's theoretical point. Perhaps God is saving his sense of humor for heaven, because it would be too much for us now. Now, I do think we get glimpses of it here. In ourselves, of course, I was talking about the silliness of our mortal bodies. But also, of course, in some of the creatures that we have. Like, look at the platypus. There's nothing that's not funny about a platypus. with a little duck bill, and it waddles and it swims and it lays eggs. Look at some of the strange creatures that we find in the deep sea that we're continually discovering for the first time nowadays. God put them there knowing that we wouldn't even discover them until this modern day. And there's something kittenish, something playful, like a father hiding Easter eggs for his children. And like Chesterton, I think these glimpses are sort of the equivalent of a twinkle in God's eyes. In a manner of speaking, he can't wait to show us the fullness of his mirth in heaven. And here on earth, laughter and joking aren't always appropriate, depending on the context we find ourselves in. And death is a serious thing. But used in moderation, used well, can't they be sanctifying? They can almost be a foretaste of the life to come. Another thing Chesterton said was, "Angels fly because they take themselves lightly." This is a flippant and a non-theological statement, but I think it's really sound and contains a lot of truth. Being overly serious is actually a sign of pride. The devil does not laugh. He has nothing to laugh about. He has damned himself to hell, and the only solace, if you can call it that, is to bring as many down with him as he can. He doesn't joke, he doesn't laugh. He's too proud for that. He's above that. All this to say, I am sorry if I offended you with my flippant joke about having "shall not be infringed" on my gravestone. Although I am nowhere near and will never be as close to the level of sanctity as Saints Lawrence and Thomas More were, I will take my chances imitating them and honoring the same spirit of their final words. And I hope you can forgive me for that. Thank you so much for the comment. I am not afraid I was born to do this. I appreciate it, and please do continue to comment, even if there's stuff you disagree with me on. If I'm being honest, these responses to comments and these ramblings that come with them are probably my favorite part of doing this show. So, thank you. We'll start the news off today with Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon and the owner of the Washington Post. In a note to the Washington Post employees on this past Wednesday, Bezos said, quote, "We are going to be writing every day in support and defense of two pillars, personal liberties and free markets. We'll cover other topics too, of course, but viewpoints opposing these pillars will be left to be published by others." So, Jeff Bezos, the founder of the progressive Amazon, is apparently now red-pilled to the point where not only is he going to be focusing his newspaper on personal liberty and free markets, but he's going to not allow that paper to publish opinions opposing personal liberties and free markets. This is amazing. I can't believe how far he's come from his initially progressive days. Like, this is overdosing on red pills. But here's my theory on him. The most important thing to him is being famous. You know how you have the three big drivers in life? It's money, fame, and power. Three big drivers for a worldling life, I guess I should say. He's effectively achieved the first and the third there in money and power. He has custom built a $300 million super yacht. You basically can't have more money than he currently has. In power, right? You own arguably one of the largest, if not the largest, consumer purchasing website in Amazon. You know, you hold the economy basically in your grasp. If you were to shut down Amazon or to blacklist people from Amazon, that would be a big deal in today's world. So he's got the money and the power. My take is that I think all he cares about now is the third. He wants to be famous. He wants to be admired. He wants to be a rock star. He wants to be Elon Musk. And I think this red pilling is a complete business decision. He sees which way the tide is turning. He sees the Musk worship going on, and he wants to be that. He wants to be the center of that right-wing adulation. Now, this is just my opinion, but I think that's the driver. And you know what? I am totally fine with that. I think at some point he needs to grow up and not worry about what people think about him. But if it swings him to the right, or at least to the standards of American truth and freedom, I'm all for it. Welcome aboard, Jeff. The water is fine. Come on in. Okay, on to probably the biggest, or at least most entertaining story of this past week. President Zelenksyy was invited to the Oval Office to discuss the war in Ukraine, potential ceasefire agreement deals, and then also the minerals deal that was kind of a part of that whole negotiation. And it did not go well. For anyone who hasn't heard, there's probably about a 10-minute clip of, live in the Oval Office in front of reporters and with the cameras rolling, Zelenksyy, Trump, and Vance, many times just straight up yelling at each other and talking over each other. So I'm going to play a few choice clips from that and respond to them.
Well, if I didn't align myself with both of them, you'd never have a deal. You want me to say really terrible things about Putin and then say, "Hi, Vladimir, how are we doing on the deal?" That doesn't work that way. I'm not aligned with Putin. I'm not aligned with anybody. I'm aligned with the United States of America.
I'm not aligned with anyone. I'm aligned with the United States of America. This is very interesting from Trump. Something that we see a lot in politics and in our day-to-day lives is jumping fully onto a bandwagon. Right? We all know the people who heard one or two sound bites from CNN, and now they are fully on board for Kamala. No room for discussion, no room for takebacks. They're 100% for her. And if you say anything that's against that, you're their enemy. And we certainly see this on our side too. People who are 100% for Trump. If you so much as point out a single flaw, you're a dirty liberal. Or RFK. He said this one thing I like on health food, and now he's perfect, untouchable, and don't bring up all that bad stuff. Well, it turns out we're like this with countries and wars too. We talk about the civil war as having a good side and an evil side, and depending on where you stand, the North or South can be swapped in that evaluation. But in truth, the Civil War was a war between two flawed groups of humans, most of whom thought they were on the right side. Slavery was bad, and an overpowered federal government was bad. The North's desire to end slavery was good. The South's desire to maintain states' rights was good. The Civil War makes a particularly good example of this, but there are elements of the same phenomenon in almost every conflict. World War II is as close as you can get to good versus evil, as Nazism is objectively evil. But if you think that all 20 million Nazi soldiers who fought for Germany were evil-hearted murderers through and through, who were only in it for the sport of murdering Jews, you're being naive. And although this may be an unpopular opinion in the trad world, I do think the Russians are the bad guys in this war. They started it. They invaded the borders of Ukraine. So Trump's comment here is not putting Russia and Ukraine on equal footing, as some people claim that he is, especially on the left. He's simply acknowledging that the U.S. is not obligated to take a formal all-in side. Yes, Russia is the aggressor, but Ukraine's border is not the United States border. If Russia or anyone else invaded the United States border, it would be a different story. We would be right to be all in. That would be Trump's job as the commander-in-chief of the United States. And Trump, with this statement, as all good leaders should, has the nuance to see that while Russia are the bad guys, that doesn't mean that we're fully in on Ukraine's side. And this is not me justifying Trump to myself or to my listeners. Some of the rest of these clips show Trump in a very unflattering light, so I just wanted to make sure to give him kudos where kudos are due. Next up, we have J.D. Vance making a comment to Zelenksyy.
For 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the president of the United States' words mattered more than the president of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied it, our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
2014.
2014 and 2015.
2014?
Yeah. So
I was not here.
yeah, but
That's exactly right.
yes, but during 2014 till 2022, yeah, the situation the same. That people are been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him. Me, like a new president in 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel. We signed ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed with him with gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring it into this conflict.
So yeah, the back and forth starts going off the rails here. First of all, I love the fact that J.D. Vance is right here in the room. I don't remember a VP in my lifetime that has been trusted and involved the way J.D. has been. I mean, he's giving speeches to the leaders of the EU, dissing them to their faces in Munich. And now here he's directly dealing with and questioning a foreign leader. It's really interesting that Trump seems to respect him and give him the floor, and even at times in this back and forth defend him. My concern is that hopefully Vance isn't sucking up too much. His inputs were very much bringing the conversation around to, you should have been respectful to the leaders of the country that has supplied you hundreds of billions of dollars, and a thank you would be nice. It's not earth-shattering stuff from JD, but it's also not polished statesmanship. So I just hope he's not saying things that he thinks Trump wants to hear. But I do like that he's there and that he is preparing for, hopefully, his role as president in 2028, not to count my chickens. Now, I also have to admit that Zelenksyy has a point here. Putin has not honored past ceasefires. Why would he now? And the closest that Trump gets to actually answering this is to say, well, he didn't do anything while I was president. Assuming that's true, which it isn't technically, Russia did break some ceasefire agreements during Trump's first term, though they did stop short of the full-scale invasion that happened during Biden's. Even assuming that's true, that's not really an answer. All Trump is saying is that the ceasefire will hold until 2028, and then after that he really doesn't care. And don't get me wrong, the isolationist in me agrees to an extent. And certainly, like, there is no foolproof way to hold malicious, crazy, evil dictators like Putin to agreements. How can you truly guarantee that he won't break an agreement? And so I think what Zelenksyy is asking for is unreasonable. It's not achievable. But I also wish that Trump and Vance had been a little bit more clear in their response to Zelenskyy's request and Zelenskyy's question. So in response to Zelenskyy's question that, well, Putin hasn't honored ceasefire agreements before, why would he now? Instead of the response they gave, which was, well, just be thankful that we're helping you at all, I wish they had been more asking further questions, digging down to, okay, what is it you want? What is it that would make you happy in a ceasefire agreement? What sort of contingencies? I imagine Zelenskyy's request is some sort of agreement that if Russia were to break the ceasefire or were to invade again, that the U.S. would respond with boots on the ground and basically start World War III. And I don't think that is the right thing to do. But I think a wiser choice would have been to let Zelenksyy not hang himself with his own rope, but show the impossibility of what he's asking for in his own words, rather than just kind of smacking him down petulantly. The next clip, we have Trump going off on Zelenksyy about gambling with World War III.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
No real comments here. I think Trump is right that the longer and the farther we push Russia, the more we gamble with a nuclear attack or World War III. But I also think it didn't need to be screamed at him in a contentious back and forth. So the back and forth went on like this for a few minutes. And this next clip is a reporter breaking in and directly asking Trump the same thing Zelenksyy was, which was, well, what happens if Putin doesn't honor the ceasefire? And Trump's response is pretty funny, if nothing else.
What if Russia breaks ceasefire? What if Russia breaks these talks? What do we do then? I understand that it's a heated conversation right now.
What are you saying?
She's asking, what if Russia breaks the ceasefire?
What if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now? Okay? What if they broke it? I don't know. They broke it with Biden because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me.
Oh, what if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head? I understand where Trump is coming from here, right? He's a businessman, and in business, you have to be decisive, you have to get things done, and you can't have paralysis by analysis. No, what if this, what if that stops progress from being made. And again, I think there would have been a better way to answer that question. But I also sort of find it refreshing to see this is obviously the real Trump coming out here, and I kind of like that. I thought that was funny. The point he's making, again, is a valid one, but also potentially overly simplistic. Again, I think a better course of action, a more stately course of action, would have been to ask her, or again, turn the question to Zelenksyy, what do you want to happen if Putin breaks the ceasefire? It then puts Zelenksyy on defense. It puts him on his back foot. And it gives you ammo for explaining back to him why his desires and his requests are not feasible. I'll play one last clip from this back and forth.
I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. but you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think? Huh? This is going to be great television, I will say that.
Well, it was indeed great television. So since this interview, more information has come out. Particularly, there was an interview with Marco Rubio, where it stated that the United States had this minerals deal with Ukraine. And this deal, the details of it were effectively the United States would have rights to some of Ukraine's minerals, and therefore have an economic incentive to keep Ukraine free from Russia. But the U.S. had this deal on the table ready to go days before this meeting even occurred, and that Zelenksyy intentionally didn't sign it, came to the Oval Office, came to the White House, and publicly and intentionally didn't sign it in order to, I don't know, potentially produce public outrage at the way that Trump and Vance treated him. I don't know if I buy this 100%, but it does explain some things. It explains why Vance and Trump were so thin-skinned and so quickly escalated. If they had been frustrated for the past few days trying to get this deal signed, and then he came and in front of the cameras refused to sign it, okay, now I can buy that they flew off the handle in this way. As a red-blooded American, I love my president and my vice president yelling at this foreign leader and sort of dominating him on a public stage. But that's just on like a base football-style rah-rah level. America! From the 30,000-foot view and the historical and geopolitical point of view, getting set off like that was sort of childish and even a little bit embarrassing. Even if it is difficult to deal with Zelenksyy and he annoyed you the way he obviously did, be the bigger man. You're the leader of the free world. But I guess it is Trump we're talking about. I would have done it differently, as I've been expressing throughout this back and forth. But then again, I was not elected president of the United States, so not my place to say. That sound means we're all out of time for today. Please like, share, and subscribe to The Traditionalists, and don't forget to ring that bell. And spread the word whether for my show Trad Takes or for any of the other shows hosted by The Traditionalists. Remember to leave a comment. It might well be the one I pick to read and react to next week. This is Eric signing off. God bless you all, and God bless these United States of America.